thought we'd do a short video on silk, talking about silk and dyeing silk. This is mulberry silk, and when I dye it in 50 gram batches, 50 gram portions, and I dye 4 portions in a batch, so 4 in each colorway. Okay, so when I roll it up into balls, silk actually almost repels water, so it's really hard to wet silk down. So you usually have to soak it. I like to soak mine for a couple of days before I dye it, and to weigh it out, I roll it loosely into a ball or a semi ball, trying not to make it tight because you want the water to penetrate right through to the middle. And I just keep winding until I get about 50 grams. Oh, we've gone a bit over there. I'll have to undo that a little bit because that's a bit much. Okay, so silk is actually really strong, and you can't actually break the tops when you hold it really close, so you really need to hold it a bit apart to ease it apart. Okay, and then once I've weighed them out, I put them into a mesh bag with a working zip, this one, and then I know when I put them into soak, sometimes I put 4 in a bag, sometimes I put 8, so that I know that has 2 batches for me, and I soak it like that. To soak it, I actually I start with warm water, and I add a little bit of detergent or the fixative A that comes with the earth palette dyes, or that you buy through Earth Palette. And I also put a little bit of vinegar or citric acid just to make sure I've got enough. Now I will show you what I mean about silk. Silk is really hard to dye because it doesn't get wet very well. So as you can see, it just floats around on top of the water, and it's hard to actually get it to soak all the way through. So I usually, as I said, I add a bit of detergent, which helps to break down that surface tension. Silk has a coating called sericin on the silk when it comes from the cocoon, which is usually in processing is removed, but it is still pretty difficult to wet down ready for dyeing. So I put detergent in my water, or the fixative A I use actually, because it's a bit milder than detergents, especially if you use dishwashing detergents which have enzyme added, which tend to eat protein or dissolve protein. So it'll damage if you use just ordinary dishwashing liquid or laundry liquid which has enzyme added, you will damage your fibre. So to keep the fibre at its best, use a detergent, and you'll probably find that the cheapest laundry detergent or cheapest dishwashing detergents are the ones that don't have enzymes added, so they're the ones you should use. Right, I'll show you what happens even with that. I'll wring that one out. Well, not that it needed any wringing out, it's not really very wet. And I'll show you what happens when you put the dye on. Clean it up a little bit, and I'll just pour a little bit of dye on here so that you can see it doesn't actually soak in, it just sort of runs off it. It doesn't really soak through. So dyeing silk is a little bit harder than dyeing fibres like wool. So I leave it to soak. I start with warm water, I add a bit of detergent or fixative A, and the other thing I also like to add is a little bit of urea. Urea comes as a powder in little balls. You can buy it from the hardware stores or Bunnings and that, and it's usually sold in the garden section, or you don't need very much. I would put in a 10-litre bucket, I would probably put about 1/4 cup. It's not poisonous, it doesn't have any smell, it breaks down. It's good for your garden. When you're finished, you can throw it on your garden. And what it does is makes the fibres swell up and opens the scales up a bit to allow the dye and the water to soak right into the middle of the fibre. So you get a much brighter, more saturated colour with it. Silk will still dye, but you'll get a much more saturated colour if you use the urea with it as well. So we're using warm water, a little bit of detergent or some sort of surfactant like the fixative A. I throw a little bit of citric acid or vinegar in because I think you can never really have too much on the protein fibres. It doesn't damage them, so you can't really overdo it. Better to have a bit much than not quite enough. And sometimes I dilute my dyes down and I forget to add a little bit extra acid to them to make them set. So in my mind, better to add a little bit too much than not enough. So I brought the silk back that we put on to soak the other day. That was Friday, and as you can see, there's still a bit of water in it. It's not totally dry. And I'll show you how it works, how it goes in the water now. So it's been soaking for since Friday, and it's Tuesday today, so several days, okay? So as you can see, it's not really floating at all anymore like it was. It was almost totally just floating because it was water resistant really. So okay, I'll just squeeze it out again. We might put that out of the way. Show you how the dye goes on. Okay, I'll just lay these out first and then come back and show you.